Alright, boys and girls, time to take apart your Huina 580. I've gone ahead and took out the pins here for the bucket or the quick attach. That's relatively simple. Take out the two screws, pop it out. If you are going to do the conversion with the Huina arm, then you're going to need to retain all the pieces except for these servos. So those will be coming out, and then you'll be putting in your hydraulics in place of those. Now, follow the instructions here on how to do it, but in this case, we are going to be going with the Magnum arm, which is the new arm and the mast here. So we're not going to be using anything from here. The only thing we're going to do is remove a couple pieces here and reuse this stock location. But for now, let's take the body off. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws underneath, so you are going to need to rotate the cab to get access to those screws, and they are very, very small screws, so make sure you don't lose them because you're probably going to need them again. They look something like that, okay? Tiny. Now, once you take those 6 screws off, you'll be able to detach this. If yours is stock, there's a cable that comes here, which is for your smoke unit. If you want to take your smoke unit off, there's a couple screws that you can remove to take off your smoke unit. Also, the other part of the top here, this part here had 2 screws. I just took those out. I want to make sure I have enough room in here to put in a different battery, but most likely we're going to have to take all of this out and probably 3D print something different to fit everything inside, which is what I think is going to have to happen. But in any case, we'll take this off and move on to the next part, which is disassembly of all the electronics here and taking this arm out. Alright, first you're going to want to take out this PCB board here. There's 2 screws that's holding this down. Once you remove that, you're going to want to unplug all those different cables. We're going to have to disconnect everything just because the arm has, I think, 3 or 4 connections there. So remove those. The one that I'm removing now is for the tracks, so the left and the right track, those 4 cables there. There's red, black, brown, and orange. So we're going to put those aside and we're going to work on those later. These 2 wires here with the green top is for the Slew gear, for the main arm, and those 2 there go to the arm and stick, as well as the bucket and for the Slew. So you have to just pull up on this one here. I struggled a bit, but there you go. See, I'm kind of smart now, aren't I? Anyways, throw this in the garbage. Just kidding. No, don't throw it in the garbage. You could always reuse this for another project or sell it to someone who needs a PCB board. Yeah, so let's move on and remove some more stuff. Okay, now, yep, so we're gonna remove the 2 screws that hold the cab together. Yep, a couple tabs that hold it together in the front. The body or the seat goes with it, so set it aside. It's not required right now. There's also glass that's in there as well. If you want to keep your speaker, you can. If you're going to put in a sound kit, it's pretty tight in there, but in any case, remove or loosen the screw, take your speaker out, keep it, and clean it up. Okay, now go ahead and rotate your machine because we are going to remove these 2 screws at the bottom that hold those cylinders in. They're fake cylinders, and push that pin out. Alright, so grab the machine, tilt it to one side, and the pin should slide out from the cab side. Yep, just push it out there, and out comes your pin. You will need this again, so don't throw it out. The rest of this stuff, just pull it. There's a rubber grommet thingy holding that together. Just yank on it, and there you go. Arm is out. So another thing to keep in mind is also if you want to keep your lights, remove them. You'll have to remove the whole arm or take it apart and keep the lights and hooking them up after. So everything's just going to be put aside, and again, you could always reuse it or sell it. let's take these parts out and hopefully we can remove all this and just have this assembly. We have to take this bottom piece out, so we've got to take this out first, this out, and then we can put this bottom rail here and then attach the arm. Alright, 5 screws. This comes off, plus those 2 screws back here, and then these 2 screws here. So we will detach this, okay, because we don't need that bottom piece. And again, save this. Someone may want to buy it. Something to keep handy. What we'll do here now is we'll take this apart. Okay, there's a screw here, here, here. I think there's just 3. And we'll take this worm gear out, okay, because we don't need it. We just need the chassis. Okay, clean it up. I put grease in here to make sure this thing runs smooth. And then we'll put it all back together. This is also the time where you can look at your ring gear here and see there's a little bit of slop. You can get an upgraded version from Maghome. They do sell a faster rotating motor, so we'll take this apart and see what's underneath. There's also a kit to get this as a metal component, which is probably another upgrade I'm going to do to have the Slew gear here. There's a shim that also comes with it, and it'll tighten this up because you see there's a little bit of slop. So we can take this off as well if we want to take the body. In my case, I'm going to be repainting this, so I am going to take this out. We also have to take this out here. This is not going to be reused at all, so if you want, get rid of this. Again, if you want to sell it. And don't be worried like, oh my gosh, how am I going to put this all back together? If you have a parts tray, like get one of those dollar store trays that we can put all our fasteners in, and then just number it or follow along here. I'm putting all my screws in a tray in order so I know how to put them back. So we will not be reusing this, okay? You can chuck it or throw it aside. We'll take that guy off last. Two screws. Here's your Slew motor. So we do have a metal, see that? It's a metal gear, which is really good. I like that. The only problem is here we're using plastic still. So again, it's a good idea to do this upgrade. Do the upgrade before, not like me, where I'm realizing now that maybe I should have bought this Slew gear and did it before I made this upgrade. But in any case, we'll reuse this and hopefully that works out. If not, you can get an upgraded version and see how that goes. Okay, after you remove the 5 screws, you'll take this collar off. Remember the orientation, the ribs and stuff facing up. The smooth side with the protruding holes goes down. Okay, make sure you clean this very well and then give it a little bit of grease. We want to make sure these surfaces are very clean. So you take your rag and just clean it and get any sand or grime that's been accumulating from all those jobs that you've been working on. Okay, set that aside. And now this part, you'll remove this. There's going to be a bunch of grease in here. Okay, so we'll clean that and we'll put all new grease. Okay, and you'll generally clean the whole body and make sure that there's no greasy areas if you're going to be repainting it, if you're going to do a different livery. And now is going to be the time where we need to get our template. They supply you with a template, and then you're supposed to put this template somewhere here, I believe, and you're going to be cutting or drilling a couple holes. So as you can see, it's going to go something like that. And yeah, I believe that's how it's going to go. Okay, and then we'll do these 3 holes, and that's what's going to hold down the pump and I believe the valve block. Yeah, so those 2 things are going to get some screws. So we'll put this template on after, but right now we're just going to clean it, and then we'll set it so that we can start marking off the holes where we're going to drill them. Now it does ask for a 4mm, 4mm, and 3.5mm hole, but the markings here are off. You need to go up 1.5mm from this mark. So essentially at the top of the circle is where you're going to want to make your holes, center of the holes. And then just make sure you cut this template out nicely. It should fit right on top, and then we'll drill those holes. Alright, one thing to note, when you do take off your Slew gear, you're going to have a red and a black and an orange and a brown. This is for each side of the motors, okay? So motor left and right, or right or left, we'll figure that out in a second because Maghom actually put it in the instructions here. I don't know if you can see, but the one side is black and red, so that'll go to one ESC, and then the right motor will be the orange and brown, and that'll go to the other ESC, okay? So left side is the black and red, and right side is the brown and orange. Alright, at this point, once you've done this, marked off these areas, cut it out, this should line up. You can use a little bit of tape to hold it down, and then you might want to use a punch just to set the start point. Alright, and then get yourself your drill bits. So these are the 3 and 4mm roughly, give or take, and then we'll drill these holes out so that they're all ready to go. Okay, there's our 3 holes, and that'll line up with the pump and the valve block. Alright kiddies, on to the bottom assembly here. Once you've dismounted the top, we're gonna have to get into this sucker because we need to do something to make sure these 4 wires work, because if you hook up an ESC to this and try to make it work, nothing's gonna happen. Why? Well, if you take out the bottom here, you'll notice as we remove the last screw, okay, so this requires you taking off the tracks. If you want to take off the tracks, you're gonna have to push this idler in and then pop the track off. It's on pretty tight. Then you're gonna need to take out every single one of these because it's held in place. This side is part of this plate and this side is part of the top plate. So you're gonna have a stack of those. Just make sure you keep them separate. You may notice that some of them are wearing out a little bit more than others, but that's just, it is what it is. And then up here I kept my tracks in the orientation that I want to put them back on, so that this is forward and that'll be the back of each side. So let's take off this last screw. And then what we're gonna have to do is get your old soldering iron, or soldering iron, however you want to call it. And we're gonna have to little screws. They're all the same, almost all of them. Separate them, left, right, bottom, 4 screws. And you're gonna take this plate off, okay? Da, da, da. So you'll see that the orange and brown go to one motor and the black and red go to the other. Now I've already taken mine out. You gotta take these 3 screws out, okay? To take the motor out so you can access this a little bit easier. And what happens is, each motor has one of these attached to the back, okay? This is attached here and it's soldered on, okay? And this is the power unit, has you know, some setup on here so that it's designed for the Huina, but we don't need these. So you're gonna unsolder them. This little piece is soldered on the side, Again, unsolder them or unsolder them. Take them off. You don't need them. They're garbage. Unless you have another project you want to use them for. But anyways, once you're done, put the motors back in. Clean everything. It may be dirty. This is a good time to clean. Make sure everything's all good. And then we're going to put the plate back on and reverse the way everything went on, okay? So we'll get into the wiring setup later to get those guys connected to the ESCs, but for now, that's how you do it. Put this back on. Make sure that you put it on correctly. So this little bump is the same as the motor side, okay? And then we're just gonna reverse the same thing. Put all these screws back in. Put your idler wheels back on. Put the tracks back on, and then you're done with the bottom. Make sure your ring gear here is nice and clean, and give it a little bit of oil or grease or whatever you want to use. And then in the wiring section of this video, we will solder these on to the ESCs and go from there. Alright guys, thank you so much for joining today's episode. Hope you enjoyed that and hope you learned something from it. On the next episode, we're going to get right back into the hydraulic side of things and start making our connections to the valve block and to the pump, and then start working on some ESCs. And then maybe, just maybe, we'll do one more episode on the final assembly of things and the electronics setting up, so doing our mixes and whatnot. Hope you guys enjoyed and play with RC. Thanks guys.